We are uh, rolling.
How Medakiapi, Kola Yuha Ichichiab. I greet you all as friends, and I just want to thank you all for tuning in last week. This is, as you know, Cut to the Chase. This is episode number 2. I'm encouraged and grateful to be back with you tonight. Today is Thursday, February 18th. I'm coming to you live from the sacred Black Hills, Wamaka Ognake Ichante, the heart of everything that is, sometimes called the heart chakra. I've heard other people refer to this location in what is now called North America as the heart chakra. As I reported earlier, Cut to the Chase will air every week, at least. I can't even promise you on what days or what times, but it will be more definite than Indian time. That old self-deprecating trope. Speaking of Indian time, I apologize for starting a little bit late. And Indian time's inappropriate for sure. I don't even know where that comes from, but we, the indigenous proper, have used it from time to time to make light of recurring situations wherein we will no doubt be waiting on somebody to start a meeting or perhaps a show. And one of our resed out esteemed colleagues will show up to this or that meeting. Sometimes we're literally waiting on a quorum. Someone shows up late and they try to chalk it up to Indian time, also known as colored people time. Don't cringe away just yet. Indian time actually means when you are prepared to do things as they are necessary, when things are ready to show up early at the right time when things are meant to be. So Indian time is on time. That's a very long way of trying to tell you that we don't have a regular schedule just yet, as my work pulls me into the field, sometimes from Pine Ridge to Cheyenne River, Rapid City, Pierce, South Dakota, Standing Rock, everywhere in between. Bottom line, I'm blessed and happy to be here with you tonight, and I hope you enjoy. Now, from the Black Hills to the universe, let's cut to the chase. Here's a quick rundown of what's coming up in the show. Of course, we got to talk about the number one thing, Trump's failed impeachment and failed violent overthrow, which brought this man to internet stardom. That is Q Shaman. This is the brother who got locked up and demanded a organic meal, and the judge actually met that demand. Talk about privilege. Number 2, South Dakota's governor, Kristi Noem, is under fire for using her travel budget, her state travel budget, to fly around the country to the NRA events to help radicalize the lunatic fringe, it seems. After that, we are very delighted to speak with Mr. Wensler Nosey from the Apache Stronghold. We will provide an Oak Flat update. As you know, that is a sacred land struggle involving Trump's recent attempt to transfer mining rights to the extractive industry. Finally, we'll round that out and end with something that I'm honored to host on our show. We'll be joined by cultural ambassadors who are shaping the evolution of LGBTQ plus, non-binary, gender fluid, justice, and parity efforts in Indian country as well as in South Dakota. Right now, we've got the latest updates, and I'm talking about, we're going to be joined by Monique, Muffie Mousseau, Felipa De Leon, Candi Brings Plenty, Beverly Little Thunder, and Lenny Hayes. Plus, if we have time, if Senator Red Dawn Foster can get to a proper location, we'll also hear from Senator Red Dawn Foster. We've got interviews from Oglala Sioux Tribe Vice President Alicia Mousseau and Reverend Isaiah Shaniqua Broken Leg. I want to thank everybody for testifying in Pierce, South Dakota just recently to accomplish justice for the non-binary community. I know that's a lot. Welcome aboard. We are going to get to it. Now, I don't know how Trump is still taking up this much time and this much space. He's been banned from Twitter at this point, but let's nail this coffin. I want to take you back to a time where there was an attempted violent overthrow of the United States, of our free and democratic elections. This man, the Lakota referred to as Wichasha Zisha Witkoko, also known as the Crazy Orange Man. I'm just kidding. We don't actually refer to him as the Crazy Orange Man. It's more like the insurrectionist, or
and we won it by a landslide. This was not a close election. And after this, we're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down. We're going to walk down to the Capitol.
Let's take the Capitol.
So these are Trump's word. This man is a racist. He is an enemy of our country, a domestic terrorist, Voldemort, something of that order is actually how we refer to this guy. And you may be wondering, why would we want to impeach Trump after he's already out of the scene? And even though in Trump impeachment failed, we can't sleep. Like Trumplicana with the triple K is no doubt organizing right now for a possible run in 2024. Also, he still has to be screened from sensitive intelligence briefings received by all former presidents, because we don't know who Trump is loyal to other than himself, his money, and his golf courses. And of course, his fringe radicals who are directly complicit with him in the death of 7 people now. 3 law enforcement officers are dead. 1 died during the violent riot. 2 have died by suicide since then. Multiple cops were injured. Over 100 injuries were reported. And 1 Trump radical also lost their lives. This is blood on his hands, blood in the Capitol, blood on Republicans' hands. They all stood back this whole time and let this happen. And now we're supposed to look the other way while the Senate acquits him. They refuse to punish this man, this dastardly, cowardly person who urged his followers to show strength. You know, everything we're showing you are Trump's own words. He kept claiming the election was stolen. Stop the steal. Like he had this, he gaslit the entire country. And if you recall, Rudy Giuliani, he was calling for trial by combat. Like seriously, we will never see these stuffed suits in the trenches. All these suits send others to die. They send our sons and daughters to fight their wars for profit. Cheney and Bush in Iraq, the Afghanistan invasion after 9/11, even though Afghanistan had nothing to do with it, we go kill 500,000 Muslims in their name, in profit's name, and villainizing Muslims to this day. Those guys are getting richer and richer, profiting from death, trying to tell us who our enemies are when they're the enemy. Rudy Giuliani, Stephen Miller, Roger Stone, Eric and Donnie Jr., there they stand ready to send others to do their bidding. They've sent one woman to her death. And it's never them. It's never the CEOs, never the politicians, never the munitions manufacturers who go to fight those wars. Maybe we should cut the soldiers in on a percentage of that profit. Maybe that would slow the war machine. Everything Trump tweeted has us sitting here now. There it is. Be there. Will be a wild time. He told us in his own words. It appears that we are live now, and we're just going to have to cut to the chase. I was talking about one of Donald Trump's sycophants. Her name is Kristi Noem. She's currently the governor of South Dakota. She's been flying all over the country, doing these public events that are hosted by or celebrated by guys like Stephen Miller, Steve Bannon, who I don't know, that guy looks like he's like a vampire or something. People like Michael Flynn, Roger Stone, David Duke and the Proud Boys. Also the Russian asset, the NRA. In fact, the Raw story reports that Kristi Noem called for the state airplane to fetch her at her house in Castlewood, South Dakota, rather than at the governor's residence in Pierre, South Dakota, where the plane is kept. Additionally, it's reported that the state's plane was used to fetch Noem at her daughter's wedding in Custer State Park. There's a park here in our country named after Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer. But when that plane went to fetch Kristi Noem at her daughter's wedding, at least it wasn't the daughter who's also on the governor's payroll. If you recall, Kristi Noem introduced the riot-boosting bills, attempting to criminalize mere support for assembly or protest meant to protect our waters and our ecosystems, our lands, from the extractive industry. Luckily, organizations like the NDN Collective and the ACLU, I also believe the Indigenous Environmental Network was in on that, but those bills were struck down in the courtroom because of the hard work from those organizations. And you know damn well that those bills, which Kristi Noem gave to the Republican legislature in South Dakota, came straight from TC Energy, which is the perpetrator of KXL. Like they got their act together after Standing Rock. But I'm thankful that everybody showed up to vote and people are still willing to go to the front line, because KXL is not dead. And people are literally fighting right now on line 3. The Daily Beast reports that earlier this month, Noem responded to a Twitter post about a food bank at a Texas school. And I want to send a word of prayer and encouragement out to Texas right now. But Noem said this about a Texas school, giving out a food bank, basically having a food bank. She said that there is no free lunch. but apparently Kristi Noem isn't opposed to receiving handouts when it benefits her own. It's reported between 1995 and 2020, the governor's family-owned ranch collected more than $4.2 million in USDA farm subsidies. This is what we have to deal with around here. We're literally just trying to survive another Eurasian plague. And these science deniers who said COVID was a hoax, they also said the climate collapse was a Chinese hoax. These are anti-maskers who cover up for each other, and they're in charge right now. But to be born indigenous is to be born into a struggle. Only this time we have millions of allies around the world who are seeking to connect to the sacred, to connect to Mother Earth, to the sacred sites, to the lands and the waters. And speaking of sacred lands, I want to bring in a couple of guests to talk about the Apache stronghold, to talk about Oak Flat. We're honored to be joined by Wensler Nosey, who is one of the lead organizers for the Apache stronghold for Protect Oak Flat. We've also got an old friend of mine, Lanny Sinkin, and I would like to check in with them. I'm hoping that we can bring them on here very quickly. I don't know what the latest development is regarding Oak Flat. There's political, on the ground developments that happen all the time in real time, but there's also legal developments that are going on. And so we have Lanny Sinkin with us, and we'll just be live here. Wensler, he was on a little bit before, but this is a night of extreme technical challenges. But I do want to, gentlemen, if you could turn Lanny's mic on, I would like to give Lanny a chance to kind of weigh in on the Oak Flat struggle. Hold on, I can't hear Lanny.
How about now?
Oh my goodness.
Can
Okay.
you hear me now?
Yes.
You can. Okay, good. I want to talk a little bit about Oak Flat. First of all, the original problem arose when the tribes, the Western Apache tribes, challenged the legislation passed by the United States Congress to take away lands from the Apache and give them to two mining companies and swap out other lands for those lands that the government took. There is in the opinion of the order from the judge, he's quite clear that the Apache people considered that land extremely sacred. I want to just read a couple of quotes from him to give you a feel for what the judge said, who denied the Apaches justice. But while writing his opinion, he said, the court found that the Apache people have been using Oak Flat as a sacred religious ceremonial ground for centuries, and that the spiritual importance of Oak Flat cannot be overstated and in many ways is difficult to put into words. The Apache argued that severing their relationship with the sacred space is tantamount to killing the tribe. And then here's from the judge. Quite literally, in the eyes of many Western Apache people, Resolution Copper's planned mining activity on the land will close off a portal to the Creator forever and will completely devastate the Western Apache's spiritual lifeblood. Now, I read those just to highlight that even the federal judges who deal with these Indian law cases know what they're doing to the tribes. But then they have this discussion about, did they have standing? Was it standing for the tribe, or was it standing for the full legal mire of reasons to deny justice to the tribe? It's something that Indian people know well. It's been going on for 500 years. But the Oak Flat case is a recent example. What could have happened? Here's my thoughts on what could have happened instead. The original treaty that was signed was written with a group of Apache tribes that were not under one roof. There were different tribes involved. And the court is looking at that and saying, well, that's a treaty, and in a treaty, it's not to the benefit of individuals, it's only between two sovereigns. So the sovereigns are the Apache people and the United States. However, the group that actually was not a sovereign entity. So it was kind of a hybrid case, a loose confederation of Apaches. They aren't one tribe, yet they've signed an agreement with the United States. What the judge could have done was say, all right, it's a hybrid case where you don't have two sovereigns. You have a group you have the United States government, and they made an agreement. And let's look at the agreement and decide what's justice as to whether that agreement should be enforced or not. That didn't happen. What happened is they just used the internal mechanisms of the court that define what standing is to deny justice when it was so clear to the courts that a massive injustice was being done. So we'll see where it goes. I have not yet spoken with the tribe to know what their plans are. I hope they will appeal. It's certainly a case that needs to be heard by someone else and considered. But it is just one of many, many examples of what the Native American people have to deal with in the United States.
Wow. We want to give Mr. Nosy Wenzler, and I know that he is a ceremonial elder, and that on Facebook, we're urging everyone to go to Apache Stronghold. That's where you can find Wenzler and all of the organizers who are helping the Apache continue this struggle to protect sacred land at Oak Flat. And on Twitter, they are under at Protect Oak Flat. And so while we kind of wait for Wenzler to potentially come on, I do want to give Lanny a chance. Lanny, if you can hear me,
I can.
If you would like to provide an update on Mauna Kea. I know that we're fortunate to have you with us all the way from Hawaii, and if you'd like to add a few words about Mauna Kea, we'd sure appreciate it.
Oh, I'd be happy to. The situation is more or less a stalemate right now. The people rose up against this giant telescope they wanted to build on the sacred mountain, and had thousands of people show up. The state just couldn't handle it, backed off. The telescope builders stopped their attempt to build the telescope, and everything went quiet. There's no resolution of the situation yet. At the same time, the people are poised, if need be, to come back to the mountain to prevent any construction of the telescope. And what the telescope promoters have been doing is offering legislation at the state capitol here in Hawaii to change the administrative rules in contested cases. So that arises where, in the mountain, for example, the Department of Land and Natural Resources has the land. They've leased it to the University of Hawaii. The University of Hawaii has subleased it to the telescope. And that's the setup. When they went to get their permit, under the administrative rules, we could ask for a contested case. We get to put on witnesses and evidence challenging that permit. And we did. We had 44 days of hearings, 71 witnesses, thousands of pages of testimony. They granted the permit nonetheless, but that was the contested case that brought to the attention of the Hawaiian people and worldwide what was happening on the mountain. So in order not to have that kind of thing repeated, there was a bill introduced to eliminate contested cases from these permit applications in land and water issues. A lot of us got involved in trying to kill that legislation. I think we have killed it. We'll see. But that gives you some feel for how extreme this devotion is to getting this telescope up, that they would actually change the entire administrative system that everybody's used to. And it resulted in this one very large case, no question about it, but mostly is a 4 or 5 day process with a few witnesses and isn't any big deal. But because our case with the telescope stopped them from building a telescope, now they want to change all the rules. Well, that's the way they play the game. I think we've stopped them.
It's indicative, and I thank you for sharing that. And if we, by the way, for everyone who's watching, if we cannot get Wensler Nosey on, then we will just reschedule. I have no problem bringing in Mr. Nosey from the Apache Stronghold at a different time. But what Lanny is talking about is the fact that these fights are almost never really over. Just like the Keystone XL pipeline, that's not really over, even though we won a huge victory with Biden withdrawing presidential support for that pipeline. These guys got other tricks up their sleeve, and they have a huge lobby. The Dakota Access Pipeline, that is a fight that is 4 years running. Mauna Kea, Oak Flat, these are fights for sacred lands. Indigenous people are standing up and expressing that original dignity. We're hardwired to defend Mother Earth and to protect and defend the sacred. And so I'm glad people are taking those steps. Lanny, I want to thank you for being with us tonight. We'll no doubt call you back in. Lanny was also on my case when I was being charged for inciting a riot, and he poured a lot of his heart and soul into making sure that all of us received justice who were targeted during the Dakota Access Pipeline fight. But at this time, Lanny, I want to transition into the next part of our show. So
it's been a pleasure being with you, Chase, and best wishes for the future.
Hey, we'll bring you back on, brother, for sure. Thank you.
Aloha.
Aloha. Wow. Thank you, Lanny, for that. And Wensler, you're probably out there watching. We sent another link. If you get on that, we'll surely let you back on. But we might have to reschedule. And it's such an honor to know that you're willing to come on the show, and I truly thank you. Everyone at Oak Flat, again, find them on Facebook at Apache Stronghold. Find them on Twitter at Protect Oak Flat. And at this time, we're going to talk about a legislative update on Senate Bill 166, and we have a few guests with us. Now, if you don't know, Senate Bill 166 in South Dakota is designed to include LGBTQ plus in the classes of people who are protected by hate crime laws in South Dakota. The bill was introduced by Red Dawn Foster with testimonials from prominent leaders, including the Oglala Sioux Tribe's Vice President, Alicia Mousseau. Before we bring in the guests, let's cue up an amazing video, which was recently released, produced and directed by Nick Kalbach and Magdalena Wozinska. We want to show that to you now before we begin discussion.
Hechiamatombi. I was born like this. I identify as a queer Indigenous Oglala Lakota Sioux, residing on the prisoner of war camp number 334, the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Traditionally and culturally, I identify as a Two Spirit. Two Spirits held a revered, honored role in our sacred circles. The colonizers changed acceptance into fear and eventually homophobia. Indigenous culture and traditions were removed, along with the eradication of Two Spirits and their sacred roles. We we need to move forward to reclaim space and empowerment, mending our sacred circles.
We got to start remembering our history and what we really walk on earth for. And that is to renew our spirits and look in the mirror and be proud of who we are.
I first realized when I was like 5, maybe. I was scared. I was like everyone else. I was scared of what people would say.
When I came out to my dad, it's like, I knew that he didn't like two-spirited people. He thought their way of thinking was wrong.
My mom and dad being homophobic towards me, it hurts a lot.
Well, somewhere in February, where I tried to take my own life, I felt really unwanted and unloved.
The gay bashing was horrible. It struck in our hearts.
We've been through a lot because we love each other. People don't understand that.
At first, you know, I just was like, maybe I'm just gay. But then, no, that wasn't enough. I was more than just gay. And I thought about it and I was like, I am trans.
Two-Spirit people have always had a role to be a part of our chill space, to be a part of our families, our extended families, our encampments. And to remove that one pole disrupts what the family strength and empowerment could look like.
A lot of people's minds are reopening from that boarding school and that colonization.
There's definitely a movement coming on, a movement of change, a movement of hope.
It's not easy, but isolating yourself is not the answer. It's really important to find your people.
I just hope that maybe one day that there's equality and somehow peace.
Don't worry about what others think. It's about you and not about everybody else.
Be yourself no matter what. Love yourself.
You're gonna grow and continue to grow. And you just really, really have to give it time.
Don't be scared of who you are.
Every Two-Spirit person has their own unique identity. Everybody has a place in our changlashkas, in our sacred circles.
We are just excited about this movement because it needs to take place on every tribe, in every culture, because we're all related. And never stand down. We will always stand up.
Can you hear us, Muffie and Felipa?
Hello. Oh.
All right, well, let me read you guys' bios really quick. It'll be a quick one, and then we'll bring you in and kind of discuss what's been going on. Muffie and Felipa recently formed their own 501c3 nonprofit here in Rapid City. It's called Uniting Resilience. Together, they are fierce advocates and activists, both on and off tribal lands in the areas of child abuse, domestic violence, sexual assault, homelessness, suicide prevention, missing and murdered Indigenous women, and what brings us here today, Native American LGBTQ Two Spirit. I don't remember when I first met Muffie and Felipa, but just from that video, and thank you, Nick and Magdalena, for that video. That is a powerful video. But just on what went on in that video, it took me right back to a hearing that the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council had when you two had brought forth the idea of marriage equality, just deconstructing all of the laws that are designed to discriminate against the non-binary community. So if you could kind of just give us a sense of what you've been doing since those days and how we ended up with this most recent development here as far as Senate Bill 166 goes. Feel free to take the floor, you guys.
Let's like to say how mitakyepi chante washte na pe chiuza to each one of you, and Wopila Tunka Chase for having us on and inviting us to this historic. This is a magical time this morning, and we really want to give thanks to all the elders and our elders that are on here tonight, and we give blessings to our next generations coming, and we want to thank everyone involved with this journey that is going on right now, and I know there's numerous people that we say Pilama Yapi Wopila Tunka to. I am Monique Muffie Mousseau, and
my name is Felipa de Leon. My Lakota name is
Tekihilawi.
Tekikilawi.
My Lakota name is Chanupa Maniwi, and we are part of the Tituan Oyate, the Ocheti Shakowi, Oglala Lakota members. And we just want to again say thank you to everyone that is making this come through. In the beginning, we had started this journey, you know, because in the first place, my mother was one of the main ones that brought us back here to South Dakota because she was ailing in her health, and she said she could not travel anymore. And I'm a sibling of, I have 3 other sisters, and we were all spread out across the United States. We all left the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. That's where we were raised and born. And our journey has come to this right now. So, but my mother passed away in December of 2019, and she got to see us pass this with our tribe. So I'm very fortunate, very thankful that we were able to spend, we came back here in 2016, and that's when our journey officially began to make a difference and a change for the tragic traumas that are happening with our own tribe. And I am an ex-federal law enforcement officer from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And I was a very, very good police officer. And I just want to say thank you to all Oglala Sioux tribal members. I never wanted to leave my tribe. I was forced to leave because of the shaming and the gay bashing, because I fell in love 15 years ago with the woman by my side now. And we were finally able to get married in 2015, but not on our tribe. We got married here in Pennington County, and they gladly welcomed us. At the time, our tribe denied us a marriage certificate. They said they didn't honor the Supreme Court decision at the time. So, you know, a lot of things took place, a lot of magical happenings occurred, and I'm sure the ancestors helped us on this walk that we had to experience everything we experienced to get to exactly where we're at right now. And whatever anybody has to go through it, because you don't know where it's going to take you and why you're here. And we didn't realize the impact it would have on us, the loss of lives that we've had to have in our own lives, the horrible tragedies that we've been told and had to see. So just keep going forward, keep moving forward. I know it's sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's sad, sometimes it makes you really angry, but there's a lot of joy in this walk when you step back and take a deep breath and realize that there was people before us, there's people right now like us, and there always will be Native American Two Spirit and LGBTQ throughout all of the world. And I don't understand why it has well, I do understand. I do understand why it has been made a shame. People shame it, but they shouldn't. So
let's Muffie and Felipa, thank you for those introductory comments there. We've got a discussion to get to, and so I want to bring in one of our next guests who was featured in this amazing video called Born This Way. Her name is Candi Brings Plenty. She is the Indigenous Justice Organizer for the ACLU of South Dakota, leading the ACLU's No KXL, No DAPL, MMIW, and Two Spirit visibility work. Candi founded the Two Spirit Nation, which was also a camp at Standing Rock during Oceti. She was a proxy for the Oglala Sioux Tribe's president's office. Most recent, she's former executive of a Portland nonprofit. Candi is Oglala Lakota Sioux, a direct descendant of Crazy Horse's band. She grew up in the Black Hills and on the Pine Ridge, being deeply rooted in her Lakota culture, spirituality, and language. And I know, Candi, I'm very thankful that you've joined the stream tonight and stuck around through all the technical challenges that we've had. If you want to do a mic check and just kind of tell us, that's the first time I saw that video, and thank you for doing that work and always just being there to express your voice, Candi.
Well, good evening, Chase. I watched your first clip. I just wanted to say it was really awesome. I'm a really big political nerd, so I got really excited. I even took notes, and I'm excited for your show to continue moving forward and picking up these issues, especially since I am a strong advocate for Indigenous justice. And, you know, I want to just say, hey, Matakiapi. Leampe tukile iyo ha chante washte nape chuziapie. Imachiapi chante makilawi. Imachiapi iyo yampa wakia tuampi iyo yampawi. My name's Candi Brings Plenty, and I'm here in the Black Hills. And, you know, I am here representing the Two Spirit Nation as the executive director. And I definitely have been on board of advocating and supporting and empowering this narrative that Muffie and Felipa had initiated from the time they first invited me into their home. They asked for support because I come from a really strong background, not only just being a Two-Spirit advocate, but I spent 8 years in Portland, Oregon, and I worked 5 of those years during the legislative session. And I have a really strong background with leading a Communities of Color Roundtable representing the Native community of Oregon with their marriage equality campaign. And so that's how I was able to link up with Muffie and Felipa. And, you know, they shared with me from the get-go what their initiative was. They shared their story. And, you know, I knew they are the voice and the face of what this movement looked like. Because I myself am unmarried. I'm single. I'm a single parent mother. I very am focused on Two-Spirit visibility on a national level, on a local level, and especially on a tribal level, because that's the component that I feel is part of the historical trauma. And as the founder of the Two-Spirit Nation at the Oceti Shakowin camp, my intention there was to plant seeds within our tribal elected leaders, within our tribal communities that came, because I knew in the beginning, it was a historical gathering of nations. And as it moved forward and flowed into ceremonies, into frontline present day Indian war, to, you know, myself being there from the beginning to the end and elevating the continued advocacy components as a water protector, a land defender, and just, you know, being an MMIW advocate, because Unchi Maka is our most sacred matriarch. So I've done a lot of different work because I know the impacts that we are in deficit of, just like the legislative session. You know, I continue to train a lot of white allies on how to be supportive of Indigenous folks. And, one of the greatest things that I can share and convey is that, first of all, to be a good ally, you have to acknowledge that your privilege was built on the shoulders of our ancestors. And to be a good ally, you're going to allow an Indigenous voice to stand on the shoulders of your privilege and your success so that we can be seen and heard.
Thank you for that, Candi. Senate Bill 166 is kind of, it's made progress. And today, the vote, it made it out of committee, and I believe it's going to the floor. But before we get to that, I want to bring in our other guests, Beverly Little Thunder. Let me just read a little bit of their bio so our audience, and there's a lot of comments coming in. I don't know if you guys can see all these, but thank you all for paying attention and tuning in. Beverly Little Thunder is a grandmother and a great-grandmother enrolled with the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. She married and mothered 5 children before revealing that she loved another woman. Living in fear, always trying to conform to the roles that she thought were supposed to be hers. When she revealed she loved another woman in 1985, she was told women like her were shot. She was told this by members of her own Sundance community. She continues to advocate for the Two Spirit community, and she's joining us now from the East Coast. And thank you for joining us, Beverly. We also have another fierce advocate. His name is Lenny Hayes. He's got a Master of Arts. He's a Sisseton Wahpeton Oyate, Sisitron Wahpetawan Oyate. Lenny is the founder of Trate Tropa Consulting, LLC. He specializes in marriage family therapy. He has extensive training in mental and chemical health issues that impact the Two Spirit and Native LGBTQ community. This includes the impact of sexual violence on men and boys. Lenny recently accepted a position with Sovereign Bodies Institute as their missing and murdered Two Spirit project assistants. Now, hey, we're all on. You're all on. I want to thank you for your patience and for sticking with this. We seem to have gotten through the bulk of the technical difficulties, but I would like maybe we have not heard from Beverly and Lenny. I would like to give you guys a chance to say what you want to, but how you were able to participate in Senate Bill 166. If you could just tell us what that means to you.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and start. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear? Okay. Yes. One of the questions that came up was, what is a Two-Spirit person? And what does Two-Spirit mean? And when you get older, you have the privilege of having experienced a lot of things. And in 1990, the term was brought to us from someone up north in Canada. And we were told that a Two-Spirit person was a person who understood both the male and female spirits of being. So we were in perfect harmony with all things. We were told that at one time we were sacred to our people, that to have a Two-Spirit person in your family meant that your family was blessed. Obviously, with the Western mindset that has influenced so many generations of our people, it became a thing of shame. And when I was growing up, no one used the word gay or lesbian. It was, they're like that. So I grew up not knowing what I was. I grew up thinking that I was supposed to get married and have children, to be normal. And after the birth of every one of my beautiful 5 children, I thought, okay, now I'm normal. Well, normal is the setting on the dryer. I didn't have anything to call myself. When I finally discovered that there were other women like me in the world, none of them were Native. None of them were Indigenous. And they called themselves lesbians. And as hard as I tried, I did not fit into what they lived. It was not me. So when I first heard the term Two Spirit, I felt like I had come home. I felt like, oh, that's who I am. That describes me perfectly. And so since 1985, I have been working to teach young people that who they love is not important. The important thing is that they have the ability to love. You know, we might grow up and we might marry 50 women, we might marry 50 men, we might marry 50 Martians. But if we're able to love, that is what is going to keep us grounded. And that is what I've discovered in the Indigenous community across the country. We have finally come together and we finally are taking our places in our communities, becoming active on tribal councils, sponsoring bills. And this is what I was asked to speak to for the bill 166. And I did so with great honor and privilege. And I have to say that watching these young people grow and take their rightful places and do the work that people my age were not able to do 35 years ago is such a blessing and an honor. And I thank you. Pilamia.
Thank you for that, Beverly. Lenny, we'd like to go right to you, if we could, just to get your thoughts on what went down with Senate Bill 166 and kind of where you see that, how you see that shaping up. Hold up, you might be on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, thank you. My name is Tukawanagi Luta, which means Redstone Ghost. I received my name from a Lakota person, even though I identify as a Dakota. So I was very honored to receive my Indian name. One of the things that I like to say is I'm honored to see how much that Muffie and Felipa have done such amazing work in South Dakota and really, really advocating in our tribal communities to get same-sex marriage passed. So I honor them for that. I left my reservation 25 years ago and moved to Minneapolis. And for the reason I left was because of the fear of violence. I grew up with a lot of violence within my community. I was bullied. I've have had my own childhood trauma. And so when I left, I knew things would be different, in the fact that even I left because my cousin was one of the first HIV cases in South Dakota in one of our reservations, and my tribe was actually going to ban him because of that. And the understanding of knowing that, back then, a lot of our tribal communities weren't educated when it came to HIV. I've been with my partner for 10 years now, and one of the things that I know of is that I can marry him here in Minnesota, but if I was to ever marry him and want to go home and go back to my homelands and retire or whatever, I know that my marriage with him wouldn't be honored. And one of the things that I really hope for is the fact that a lot of the hate, a lot of the hurt that's happening to our Two-Spirit people will soon be really brought to light. I've worked really hard to talk about a lot of the issues that impacts the Two-Spirit community. One of the things that I know that's what's happening to our young people is our young people are being trafficked now. And that's another issue that we don't talk about in our tribal communities, and we need to talk about that. We need to create spaces, healing spaces for our young people. And that's one of the reasons why that I got into the work that I do, because I really would like to see our Two-Spirit people have a place of healing and acceptance. So I'm very honored to be a part of this, and I wish that I could really play a bigger part in all of this. but because of my own work and then being, you know, here in Minnesota, I hope that one day that I will make that decision to move back to my homeland. But because of the such hate that we have in our tribal communities against Two-Spirit people, I don't know if that'll ever happen, but I just want to say that I'm very proud of Muffie and Felipa and the work that they've done so far.
Trying to get me unmuted here. Wow, you know what? To hear you guys say that you have to leave your homeland, you have to leave your loved ones, your family. There's people that come from within that male hetero dynamic don't realize the way that these communities, our people, are targeted, the way that they are discriminated against, and it doesn't make sense to be this way as Indigenous peoples. Like, how did we get to this point? And so I'd like all of you to kind of think of how we got here, but in order to keep it flowing, I want to throw it back to Muffie, Felipa, and then Candi to kind of to jump in and add your thoughts to, you know, how we got here and where you see yourselves taking this struggle. Like, where are you at today in relation to Senate Bill 166 as well?
Okay, I'll go ahead and start by saying thank you for those blessings, Bev, and thank you, Lenny, again. I just want you to know that SB 166 is a long time coming for the non-native and the native communities and all minorities throughout the entire world. This is a change of hate. We need to stop pushing that word down and start letting people know. We were here long before the George Floyd incident happened. The police officers were doing that to Native Americans long before all of that chaos took place. And we can go back to the Yellow Thunder camp. We could go back to many things that the natives were forced to look away and take from the United States law enforcement and government. So I'm not coming in a divisive manner, but we have always been here long before the Europeans even arrived here to this land. And it's important to remember that all Indigenous tribes did have Native American Two-Spirit throughout all of their tribes that consisted of the ceremonies and helping. So that's a big part of what we're renaissancing our actual cultural ways. It's a renaissance of our culture and our teachings from our ancestors. You know, I know my family had ceremonies from way back when I was just little, and I don't see those ceremonies anymore. I don't see that respect anymore. But Two Spirits were a big part of those ceremonies and conducted them and managed them. And that needs to happen some more within our tribal cultural ways. And I know we're getting there, but this is a huge step because we went to all 9 tribes here in the state of South Dakota, and we are very, very happy that we want to become a member of every single tribe after visiting every 9 tribe. They really made us feel welcome. We gave tobacco, and I just want to remind all of us that what me and my wife did was we did the spiritual way. When we entered every tribe, we took tobacco and asked permission to speak. And that's the original way. Before you even talk to anybody, you have to give tobacco. We gave sage, we gave cedar, bitterroot, and then we asked permission. And I think all of the tribes and their council representatives and executives boards at the time were shocked by how we entered every tribe. We did ask that permission and they were like, oh my God, you guys are from back in the day. This is something that our ancestors, our elders taught us long, long time ago, and now it's gone. But you guys are coming with that. So I just want to bring that into this, that every single tribe welcomed us and they all put the tobacco out and they all ensured us that we have full support from every single tribe. We were blessed with many, many stories of Two Spirits throughout all their Tiosh Bayes in all 9 tribes. So it's very important to realize that they even knew of some European Caucasian families that had Two Spirit that were either beaten and shamed out of the state. And so it crosses all the way in an equality manner. And I just want to make that clear that we do respect all colors of skin. And we do have very, very close emotions to every tribe and every nationality that respects our Two Spirit, respects the LGBTQ. And this SB 166 could not be where it's at without the help of Senator Red Dawn Foster, House of Representative Puri Puyer. I know I spoke with Sean Bordeaux, Troy Heinert. They're very, very supportive of this. And they're from the Sichungu, Sean and Troy. And it's time. This is the time that this has to take place, and change needs to happen. Just like, our elder Beverly was involved with the change. This comes around in some kind of the moment presented itself, and I can't sit back knowing what I know about law and not do anything. So I did quit my job and I did pursue to try to find an answer. And our cultural spirituality and our ways showed us what we had to do, and it presented itself to us, and we're walking that journey now. And so we're going to continue this walk because it has to be walked. And we will continue to try to make a difference for our next generations coming. So that's very, very important if you have something to say about the 166.
Okay. The 166, I'm so happy that it was passed today to the Senate floor. It was very important that we pushed it. I have 5 children and 6 grandchildren. I don't know, when my grandchildren are older, one of them's gonna be Two-Spirited. I just want them to have that protection, and I don't want them to go through the hatred and the things that me and my wife had to endure through our relationship. I don't want my grandchildren to go through that if, they decide they're gonna be Two-Spirited. And anybody's grandchildren, Our children, as Lakotas, we say our children are sacred, and we need to protect them in any way we can. In any way we can protect our children, no matter who they are or who they decide to be or who they what they identify as. This is my big push. I had one of my nieces, committed suicide. She was Two-Spirited. I just, if these laws were in place, that person that caused her to commit suicide would be in jail. Because you don't say all these hurtful, angry words to children. These are children, and these are who I want to protect. That's who I want to make sure that, they're safe. They're going to be safe. You know, we have a generation that's going to be coming. Our next generation is going to be coming. And we want to make sure that none of them are going to be hurt, that they're going to have a safe place to be who they are. So I'm very excited about this SB 166. And I'm hoping the state will move forward with it and keep it going.
We're proud of Senator Red Dawn.
Proud of Senator.
Yes, we don't know when it'll hit the full floor, but we can find that out very quickly. Candi, we want to keep the rotation going here because we have a lot of guests on and we have ample time. We'll stay with this. It's an honor to have you guys on because we really need the thought leaders and those who are. This isn't like some life passion. Like this is your life. This is our life, and it doesn't make any sense why we are this way to each other in indigenous nations, but it's something that we need to deconstruct. You're talking about the suicides and it's something that we need to push out there for our children, for our young people, because they're looking to you. You may not feel like you're a role model or you're a leader, but all of our young people are looking right at you, and you're providing that leadership for them. So, Candi, I do want to give you a chance to weigh in either on whatever you feel like, and especially with Senate Bill 166, you were able to testify there, and you're tireless. And so I do want to give you the chance to speak to those things.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I didn't testify, but I have been utilizing my background working in the legislative floor and being an organizer. And so I was training Muffie and Felipa's team on how to utilize the platform that they're working with. And I help them just being the back person in the background. And I really enjoyed getting the lineup together, organizing the folks and helping them with their testimonies, and just even being strategic in the way the lineup ran. So, you know, for myself, like I said, I'm here on behalf of the Two Spirit Nation, and that advocacy goes beyond just like this intention of the show. And anytime one of us is speaking, it's very vital that we empower one another, because just like how Indian country is very small, yet we cover Turtle Island. The same thing with our Two Spirit families. You know, we all are connected throughout each of the states, throughout each of the Two Spirit societies, throughout each of our tribal nations. So it is vital for that representation to be seen as well, because I know just working with the legislative session, the language is so important in how we advocate. And so, you know, I want to talk about the video. The intent there, I was asked to be filmed, and I had said, I would rather utilize this time to focus on the youth. And so in that moment, I organized for the youth to be highlighted. And it wasn't even intended for a film at the time. You know, I had said, I would love for there to be, for these kids to get some professional photos done, for them to see themselves and for them to come fully their whole authentic self, you know, in a way that they don't get to be in school or in their families. I wanted to create a safe space so they could do some of these glamour shots. And so from there, you know, they just told their stories and they just opened their hearts. And that's how this film really started going and getting motivated. And so I was asked, and I built a friendship with Magda and Nick, and, you know, they just wanted to have a discussion, and they filmed that discussion. And that's where the intro began and the whole narrative of that film, because I had told them, you know, I was living in Portland, Oregon, and I didn't plan on moving back to South Dakota. But my father was in tribal politics for over 20 years. He actually retired while we were at Standing Rock in the winter in 2016. But I got my political background because when I was a teenager, I didn't realize that I was canvassing and I was, being this field director with my high school mates and peers just to go collect signatures for other council members. My father would say that representative is going to be really impactful. Can you help them? So, I kind of been doing this work for over 20 years. And it was him who really empowered me because I never really had a coming out story. I felt like I didn't have to explain myself to my family. I felt like I'm just going to live my life, and I'm going to be me, and I want to walk forward in this two-spirit journey. And so, my girlfriend moved in with me, and my father had called me one day and he said, "Your mother told me that you have a girlfriend, and I just wanted to know, she said, you're two-spirit, and I wanted to talk to you and ask you if you wanted to have that conversation with me." So I told him, "Yes, I am, Dad. I'm two-spirit." And he said, "Okay, well, first of all, I just want to tell you that I love you and that I support you." And he said, "And my only concern is," because at the time I was in a custody battle and my daughters were 3 and 4. And now they're 16 and 17. So he said, "My only concern is that I know you're in a custody battle with your children and there's no protection for you legally." And he said, "There is also a lot of elders who forgot that two-spirit people are sacred." And he said, "So, the only thing I can do is to tell you that I love you and I support you. And when you come across folks like that, when you're fighting the system, when you come across those elders, you say, Hechiyama Tumpi, and I was just like, okay. And he said, "Always remember that. You tell folks you were born like this. You came from the Milky Way. You came from the Wachakwi Oyate like this. This is who you are." So when I seen the video for the first time last week, I cried and I cried again, because that's still that power of supporting as an ally, as a parent, as a good relative to help us mend our sacred circles. Because that is part of that patriarchy and misogyny that you were talking about at the beginning, because that was a learned trait that isn't part of our Wolokota or our kinship, mentality of our Tioshpaes, because we are like the teepee poles. And that's what I was talking about. And when I was having this discussion was that, and even at Standing Rock, that was what I taught and I shared and I brought to our leadership circle. And we did have decision-making processes built on the tripod of the teepee, because we had a man, a woman, and a two-spirit. And in that circle, that was Julian Bearrunner and Holyoke Lafferty and myself. And so, it was empowering to reverberate that narrative at Ocheti Shakoi and for that to be carried forward with this next generation. And just even planting those seeds and giving that verbal language, because that's also something I'm really proud of for the work that I've been doing with the ACLU South Dakota, is that to use the language LGBTQ and Two Spirit in all of the narratives and all of the advocacy that we do. Because when I hear legislators on the floor using that word, those terms, LGBTQ and Two Spirit, it excites me and it really empowers me. And I feel it healing these broken parts inside of me that, just simply being acknowledged within these bills and on the legislative floor is empowering. And that in itself is part of what I want to bring to the table in regards to elevating the front lines. So for me, working on Senate Bill 166 in my free time outside of the scope of the work that I'm already doing, I feel that is how I can contribute. And so, that is why I didn't testify. My job was to empower other leaders so that they knew how to do this work and so that they can continue testifying on a local level, on a tribal level, and continuing growing this empowerment for Two-Spirit people to reclaim their places in our sacred spaces, within our tribes and within our own Tioshpaes. But okay, one more thing. Sorry. So, you know, Lenny's talking about some of this amazing work. And there is a House bill coming up on Monday. It's House Bill 1199, and it's missing and murdered Indigenous people. And so I am been advocating for the inclusivity from MMIW. And at the time, I would say missing and murdered Indigenous women. And I would add an X so that trans women were being also elevated and seen in this movement. But now I am emphasizing to use missing and murdered Indigenous people or missing and murdered Indigenous relatives, because that incorporates Two-Spirit folks as well, including girls, men, and boys.
Thank you for that. You were in the emails and all that stuff, so I just thought that you had testified. I did not get to testify either. There was some technical difficulty there, but I do want to give Beverly, whoever wants to go first out of Beverly and Lenny, if you could talk about, you know, where you first heard the term Two-Spirit and really how you're all survivors. You've lived through this targeted dehumanization, and a lot of people are wondering why Two-Spirit needs to be included in the law. And it's important for the Indigenous aspect to have a place in the law. So I understand the need to have Two-Spirit in the law, but I'd like you to weigh in any way that you see fit about that term and about, you know, what you're thinking in terms of passing down that same strength to younger people who might be watching tonight.
Well, the term Two-Spirit was adopted because there really is no Indigenous language that calls the people in their communities Two-Spirit. And if someone was writing about a whole room full of Indigenous queers, and they used the word for each and every one of their tribes, you would be going through 2 or 3 pages. And so it was adopted in 1990 as a marker. And it was understood then by the group of Indigenous people who came together, which also included B. Medicine, who was an anthropologist, that 30 years from now, the young people may choose a different marker. And some people wouldn't want the word Two-Spirit. Some people would want to be called queer. Some people would want to be called gay or lesbian. But it was a marker so that we would be recognized within our communities, within our families, and within the larger gay and lesbian community. Because as Two-Spirit people, we are different. We have roles. We have roles in our communities. We have many, many men that I know that have taken on their sisters' children and raised them. So many of the Two-Spirit women I know have stepped in to take care of the elders, who take care of those that are sick, who assist those women who are giving birth. We had traditional roles in our communities. So that's what Two-Spirit means to me. And it means that it is a living title that I carry as I move forward in my own community.
Thank you for that, Beverly. Lenny, if you'd like to weigh in on the term Two-Spirit and just how, you know, in your work, how we can begin to approach healing inside of our own families, inside of our own bands. I'd like to give you that space.
Thank you. Well, I really want to be honest. I didn't grow up in culture or spirituality just because of being a part of the foster care system from the age of 10 to 17. So I didn't grow up with culture. I didn't learn the word Two-Spirit until I moved here to the cities 25 years ago. But one of the things that I want to talk about is that when I was growing up on a reservation and when I was being bullied and ostracized, I was being called the Winkta. And so that was a derogatory term that was used against me while I was growing up. And so when I moved to the cities and I began my own healing journey from all the trauma that I experienced, one of the things that I heard the term Two Spirit here in Minneapolis. And so I went out looking for Two Spirit people and Two Spirit elders to actually sit with them and really understand that. But for me today, one of the things that I tell people is in order for me to decolonize my way of thinking, I will call myself a Winkta first because that's the word that was given to me by my people. And then second, I will identify as a Two-Spirit male because that's a word that was, it came about in 1990. It's not a word that's been here forever or from the beginning of time. And then lastly, I will identify as a gay male. That's my way of decolonizing my way of thinking. One of the things too that I also don't do because of my own conversations with Lakota and Dakota and Ojibwe elders is that I don't use pronouns either because I believe pronouns is another form of colonization. The things that I learned from the elders is that, we do have a word in our language for male and female, but a lot of times people will ask elders or older people or older Native people, and they will say to them, which pronouns do you use? Our elders get confused because they don't understand that. And basically my understanding from what they've told me is that, before colonization, we were respectful to everyone. That wasn't really important to us because we treated everybody with respect. So when people ask me what my pronouns are, what I usually say to them is that I don't use pronouns because I believe it's a form of colonization, and that if you want to call me something, call me Lenny, call me human being. That's who I am. If you want to talk about me in a sentence, please use he, him, and his. But what really got me into this work of really advocating for healing for Two-Spirit people and going out and educating within our tribal communities is the fact that within a little over a 2-year span within my own tribe, we had 5 individuals who identified as Two-Spirit or Native LGBTQ who all died by some form of violence, with the youngest being 14 years old and she hung herself. One of the things that I say is that our young people should not be killing themselves for who they are. We didn't treat our people like that. History also tells us that in a lot of ceremonies, they actually had celebrations. They had ceremonies for young people when they were coming out. They always said that our mothers knew when our child was different, and that wasn't meant in a bad way. It was a good way because of the roles that we played in community. We were medicine people. We were healers. We took in orphan children. We went on war expeditions. We played a role in community, and we were honored. So that's where a lot of my work is based on, is re-educating our tribal communities, and then also reminding people too that in our languages we didn't have a word for lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. So when I go into tribal communities to educate, that's one of the first things that I ask them is, do you know the word in your language that would identify someone like me? And a lot of them don't know. And so I always say that's the impact of colonization on the Two-Spirit community. So that's my thoughts.
Wow, thank you for that. Before we hit the next round for the panelists, we do want to, we were kind of waiting for Red Dawn Foster to jump on, but she might not have reception. So our team, if you could queue up and go ahead and just roll into whatever video we might have of Red Dawn, Senator Red Dawn Foster.
Seeing just the tribe's stance grow throughout this time is a testament to the work that's been done at the grassroots level. Muffie and Felipa really made this their lifelong passion to bring this to the awareness and get protections in place. So to see just the level of awareness and commitment to making sure that our Two-Spirited community feels embraced, encouraged, and at the very least not discriminated against, it is amazing. And to have Alicia Mousseau, Vice President of the Oglala Sioux tribe, come and testify, both as a lesbian and as a leader within our community, was amazing, because what she brings is not only that firsthand perspective to know what the community is encountering, but also the support from the tribe. So I think you see that as a nation, we are moving back to more of our traditional values and really fighting against this colonized view of who we are as relatives.
Wow. As you know, Senator Red Don Foster is from District 27 in South Dakota. Perry Poirier is also from that district. And then right next to us is Troy Heinert and Sean Bordeaux. And we're also very thankful to have the vice president of the Oglala Sioux tribe testifying at the hearing with Senate Bill 166. And if we have clips of Alicia Mousseau, who is the vice president of the Oglala Sioux tribe, we'd like to show those to everybody tuned in right now.
Well, last year, the Oglala Sioux tribe passed our own hate crime bill, set the foundation to protect our community, our relatives, our nation. And, you know, we want to encourage that outside of our boundaries in the whole state of South Dakota. And so really emphasize being a good relative, because that's what all of our laws and what our traditional practices and ways of knowing are based on, is our kinship and relationship to each other and protecting each other. Because without each other, we're not a nation. So want to relay that on to the state of South Dakota as well, and strengthen our state and our relationship with the state and relationship with each other in the state.
Thank you for that. It takes all of these efforts, these grassroots efforts. It takes Muffie and Felipa working through their nonprofit. It takes Candi, Brings Plenty, whether she's with ACLU or with the Oglala Sioux tribe or with Two Spirit Nation. It just takes these people not giving up and being relentless, following in the footsteps and being able to inherit the struggles and the sacrifices of people like Beverly Little Thunder and Lenny Hayes, who are with us tonight. Like, I did not know how deep this goes and how directly proximate it is to all of us in Indigenous country. I do want to give everyone who's on another chance to just share maybe your closing thoughts, or what you'd like young people out there who no doubt are struggling, no doubt are at risk of becoming a casualty of colonization, just like all of our people who are on the streets, usually with some trauma, perhaps substance abuse. I mean, we face tremendous challenges as Indigenous people, and there's no excuse, there's no reason we should be treating each other this way, victimizing each other just because of the way we're born, because of the way that we were taught about gender, about LGBTQ, about non-binary people. And we have a lot of work to do. So I'd like to start with Muffie and Felipa and give you both a chance to kind of give some of those thoughts to our listening audience and to the people that are coming up who will be able to view this in the future.
Thanks, Chase, and thank everybody for those words on this, what's going on right now. I just want to say good evening to all of and everybody that is watching and will see this in the future. That I was born and raised there in Porcupine, South Dakota, and I played basketball, did everything. Went to all of the sports things. I got involved in rodeo, and we know how to plant. Grandmas and grandpas taught us how to live off the land and the berries, when to go picking. I have all of that instilled in me, and I can teach all of that. And don't be afraid to ask. If you see any elders, always ask, because we and they, our elders, experience more than where you're at right now. And as you grow understand and know that there's other things that are going to be coming up that you are going to be facing. Face it. Don't run away from it. You come from, and I'm talking specifically to the Native Indigenous community, you come from ancestors of fierce qualities and skills in helping Mother Earth help us. So if you can define that, remember that we help Mother Earth help us. And white people and colonizers, they call it recycling. They call it research. They call it science. But our ancestors and your people from long, long ago always knew this. We all had these skills, we had these knowledges, we had all of it. And we knew how to keep Mother Earth safe and replenishing. But the impatience that our white society, I'm not just going to say the white society, I'm going to say this generation right now that is very impatient, and they don't, and I know you're impatient, but don't be. Take a deep breath, stop being reactive, and realize that when you look at things, you need to know your cultural ways. And Wola Kota has many values in that system that can help you with that. And I fully would like to always say that I am so happy that my grandparents and my parents taught me our ways. And I grew up very culturally, very spiritually. And I did, they did try to put me into the Catholic system, but I was expelled when I was 4th grade because, there was Iescas, what we call Iescas, and others that made fun of me because I had long hair and I had braids, and my grandma made me beadwork, and the little rabbit skins that we used to wear around our braids, and I wore moccasins to school, and I would get pushed and teased, and they would call me, "Hey, you little Indian, go back to your wigwam." Woo, 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 woo. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that will view this from the Porcupine area that will understand and realize that you were a big bullies, and that was wrong because I didn't put up with it. And the people that ended up trying to bully me, I beat them up. And so I was the one that was expelled. So I just want to make that clear that you don't need to fight for who you are. I want you to always be who you are, because I'm going to be who I'm going to be. And it was time for me to stop allowing anybody to push me around. And I've kind of lived by that motto my whole entire life. And I really want to send that message to everyone to just be who you are and acknowledge that even if the people around you are not acknowledging you, it's okay. We acknowledge you and we see you, and we're going to be here for you. And just know that this path is getting easier for you because we are facing those bullies, and we are putting protections in place for you to express your own self and be who you are, because we did experience some violence. We did experience some harsh trauma to our time together. So I just want you guys to always realize that that's the reason why we're walking this journey right now. And I'll go ahead and sorry, I just went into a long story. I'm sorry about that.
Just want the younger generation, to understand that this is a long journey that we're going on, and we're doing this for you. And we just want you to know that if you ever need us, we're here. Yeah. You can always get a hold of us. We'll be right here for you. We'll support you. It gets hard, but just stay strong and believe in yourself, and believe in who you are. It's going to be okay.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Candi, if we could, hopefully your mic's still on, and we just want to give you some chance to say some closing words, you know, your closing thoughts. We know the work continues, but we do want to give you some space to speak, because the listening audience is still with us.
I want to just highlight the fact that us Two Spirit folks, we've been here since before first contact. And there's documentation since first contact. And so, you know, within any of the LGBTQ plus spaces, you know, please create space for Two Spirit people, because you are on Indigenous lands and there are Two Spirit people wherever you're at. And it is part of that healing and mending our sacred circles, our communities, and just continuing to be advocates and good relatives to create that space and visibility. You know, just like the show in itself is giving us this space as Two Spirit people to elevate the narrative of the fight that we're working on right now with Senate Bill 166. You know, and I love what Muffie and Felipa had just said, because, you know, myself included, I step into places and spaces where I know there is not Two Spirit representation. And one of the things that I do is, you know, I step into those places and I do my best to create safe spaces, or either to just break open those places that have held toxicity, that have held, you know, the harmful continuation of assimilation and white supremacy. And so I really enjoy supporting folks who have this type of determination. And personally, myself, you know, I chose to empower myself when I was at Standing Rock, and Lexi Dennis Banks came up to me, and he did come to the camp, to the Two Spirit Nation camp. He had us sit down, and, you know, he was visiting with Unchi Beverly Little Thunder. And it was really great for the other Two Spirit folks to feel that good relative vibes, to be seen by one of the co-founders of the American Indian movement. And he said to me, you know, as he was giving me a hug and he was leaving our camp, you know, he said, he said, "Where's your crown?" And at the time he was wearing a cowboy hat and it had a crown on it. And he said, you know, "You're a Two Spirit warrior queen. You need to be wearing a crown so people can see you." And that stuck with me. And that's, you know, my way of empowering myself and creating space so that I can be seen and heard, because, you know, we are trailblazing, whether it's on the political, you know, emphasis of the legislative floor, whether it's passing ordinances and resolutions in our tribal governments, or even just advocating within our school systems. Because I have 2 teenagers, and, you know, they've informed me of how many Two Spirit students there are, but that, you know, they're just needing that leadership to create this component for them to feel seen and heard in the school systems. So I'm really grateful that this year I'm seeing that component within the Oglala Sioux tribe. And I've been working with the GSA National Network, and I brought them into our tribe last year, and I gave them, we went around to all the schools, the high schools, and we initiated what tribal GSAs could look like. So this year, after the legislative session, that's what I'll be working on as well. And, you know, it is about the future generations. It is about honoring those elders and LGBTQ Two Spirit people who came before us. And it's up to us, and like the work that Muffie and Felipa and Lenny are doing, you know, carrying that forward. And so that our future generations, they don't have to fight the way we have. They can just thrive, and they get to live, and they get to dwell as their full authentic selves. And before I, you know, sign off on my voice and my platform, as the Indigenous Justice Organizer for the ACLU, I want to encourage folks, to just go to our website if you want to start learning more about politics, or just learning more about grassroots activism, or just learning more about how you can be involved. Go to our website, aclusd.org, and just, right immediately it gives you an opportunity if you want to be updated on what's going on in our state. And also, I am so excited. I'm going to be hosting my own show as well, and it's going to be called Wakalapi Talk. And we're starting out with a legislative session component where I'm going to be speaking every Saturday morning with one of our Indigenous legislators so that they can be seen and heard as well. And we get to hear about their legislative agenda and hear from them how constituents can be more involved.
Well, thank you for that, Candi. We look forward to Wakalapi time. Let us know when it drops so we can help promote. Lenny or Beverly, if either of you want to go first in giving sort of your closing thoughts and whatever you'd want to pass on to those who are coming up and kind of relying on you to continue to be strong. You're survivors, that's for sure. We might have lost Beverly, I'm not sure, but so Lenny, if you could start, we'd appreciate that.
Sure. So one of the things that I want to tell our young people is to remember that we all play different roles in our community, and we may not all do the same kind of work, and that's okay. And the reason why I say that is because I worked with a 11-year-old boy, and I wish that a lot of our Native people were like this family, because the dad was very stoic, and I've never seen a Native heterosexual male that was so compassionate and loving to his child who identified. The reason why I worked with this family was because his mother was a social worker and had asked me if I could work with him because he was depressed and going through a lot of anxiety. One of the things that was really impactful for me was when I went and did some family sessions with his family, he stated in this session, I'm afraid that I'll never be the son that my father wants me to be. That was so impactful. I mean, I will literally tell you, I became very teary-eyed. And one of the things that his father said to him was, he told him, he said, no matter who you are, he said, I'm still going to love you. This is your journey. I'm going to walk with you and protect you. And like I said, I became very teary-eyed because you never hear Native men say that to their children who identify. So one of the things that I want to tell our young people is that to remember that you will find your part in community. You will find what your role is, and that you be comfortable with it. Because when I worked with this little boy, I told this little boy, while he was 11 years old, I told him, one of the things I said is, you may be a medicine person, you may be a lawyer, you may be a doctor, you may be an advocate, you may be a therapist, but you get to choose who you want to be. And to remember that you are going to help our people, because that is the role that we played as Two-Spirit people before colonization. And so what I tell the young people is, please don't give up, that we have people that are in front of you who are paving the way for you to take our place. One of the most powerful things that an elder said last night in my Two-Spirit support group that I facilitate is that he said, we need to put ourselves at the table and to demand to be heard. That is what we are supposed to do as Two-Spirit people, because we are the ones who need to help heal our communities, help our Two-Spirit people heal, because a lot of our Two-Spirit people out there are hurting. The ones I worry about the most are the ones who are growing up on the reservation, who are in rural communities. They're the ones who are feeling a lot of pain. And, so I just want to tell our young people, please don't give up. Because again, like I said, our young people shouldn't be killing themselves because of who they are. So thank you.
Wow. Well, Beverly might have, her phone must have died or something, but I really want to thank everybody for joining the stream tonight, joining the live feed. Maybe we can do an update once Senate Bill 166 hits the floor. But I just want to thank you, Muffie and Felipa and Candi and Lenny and of course Beverly. Thank you all for sticking with it tonight. We'll catch up with you very soon, and so we'd like to move on to the next part of the show and just kind of close it. It's heavy material. And so I want to give that space that it's not mine to kind of like, recognize or anything like that. I know the folks that were on the panel tonight, and I want to thank them for being survivors, for being strong in the way that I know that our people need them to be, because we do a lot of senseless things in Indian country, and being homophobic or transphobic or xenophobic or racist, those are things that we're trying to unlearn. We're doing the best we can in the time that we were born into to continue to push and to carry on that struggle of those who've come before us. And so I do want to thank you all for tuning in, for staying tuned in. We've been going for some time, and we had a huge technical difficulty in the beginning, but we do want to close by doing a birthday remembrance of John Trudell. His birthday was on Monday, February 15th, and that is just coincided, happened to come on the same day as President's Day. But we want to send word out to his family and let you know that we appreciate you sharing him with us, with the indigenous world and with the universe at large. So if we could cue up some footage from Earthstream Media.
It's not because, the accusation is that he killed these FBI agents, but the U.S. government knows as well as I do that that's not what happened. This is the reality. But it's because he represents a philosophy and a thought of resistance. He represents a different life perspective than what the industrialized world is trying to force upon our people. Right? And he exercises his responsibilities. And your responsibility is to protect women and children when they are attacked, to protect your people when they are attacked by someone else. Your responsibility is to protect them. You don't delegate that responsibility off to some police agency that cannot possibly or will not possibly help you. You don't delegate that responsibility off to someone else. You protect the best that you can. And that's, but you look within America, America's not, it has a tendency, I would say generally speaking, the Americans have a tendency not really be protective towards each other. It's too competitive. The programming goes way back. It goes back to infancy and things, and so that whole kind of a consciousness isn't there. It's got to do with conscious things that Leonard's locked in a cage for. He's conscious, and they know he's conscious. He's not a god or he's not perfect. He's just conscious, right? And he acts on his consciousness. He lives according to how his consciousness tells him what is right to do. There was a firefight took place, and Leonard's in jail because of it. But what it was in reality is there was a battle between two opposing forces, two different perspectives, and it erupted into a gunfight. Right? But it was an act of war. It wasn't something that they should have put him in prison for. Especially since they have no evidence to support their accusation that he killed those agents. They don't have any evidence of that whatsoever. And that's, anyone that is familiar with the legal terminology of this case is aware of that. It's much too long for me to explain. But they made up evidence, and they committed perjury, and they made people say things that weren't true. And when I say made up evidence, I'm talking about manufactured evidence, and they just lied about a whole lot of things. And they did not allow him to present a defense. It's because they needed someone to take a conviction. That's why he's specifically in the cage now. They put Geronimo in a cage, you know. They put a lot of our people in cages. They send them off to Florida. Now it's Illinois. Send a lot of our people away in chains over the last couple hundred years. See, it's all the same. To us, it's all the same thing that's been happening. See? We're just experiencing it again.
Wow, thank you for that. That came from Earthstream Media. It was filmed in 1983, and Leonard Peltier is still doing political imprisonment for what happened there at Jumping Bull property. And I want to send a word out to Leonard Peltier. He's in year number 45, going on 46, and we wanted President Trump to pardon him, to free him, and now we've got to put that same pressure on President Biden because he can do this. I want to thank the young brother for helping me close out the show in the background. From the Black Hills to the universe, this is Cut to the Chase. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll be back again next week. So, Doksha Ake Wachiangtelo. Thank you for tuning in. Good night.